I'm sorry, sir, but without a valid government-issued photo ID and current insurance card, we can't admit you for non-emergency treatment. Hospital policy. The ER intake clerk's voice was detached, her eyes fixed on her screen, deliberately avoiding the gaze of the elderly man hunched over the counter, his face pale and twisted in pain. James Jim Corian, 78, a decorated combat medic, clutched his chest. My VA card. It's in my wallet. Stolen yesterday. This is urgent. The clerk merely gestured to a sign listing admission requirements. Policy is policy. 5 minutes later, as Jim sagged into a hard plastic chair, struggling for breath, the ER doors slammed open. A uniformed Army colonel stormed in, his expression dark with fury. His eyes swept the room before locking onto Jim. Jim knew the brutal calculus of an overwhelmed ER better than most. As an Army combat medic, he'd made life-or-death calls under fire with far fewer resources than this gleaming hospital had. Now, at 78, it was his life on the line. A sudden, vice-like pain had gripped his chest in the park, shooting down his left arm. Symptoms he recognized with icy dread. He'd barely managed to hail a cab to County General, his breath ragged, sweat beading on his forehead. His wallet, holding his license, Medicare card, and, crucially, his VA ID proving his service-connected heart condition, had been stolen the day before. He'd filed a police report, but hadn't replaced it yet. All he had was a creased copy of his DD-214 discharge papers tucked in his jacket, and the name of his VA cardiologist, Dr. Evans, seared into his memory. Staggering to the intake desk, each step a battle against the pain, he knew he needed help. Fast. The waiting room was chaos, coughs, cries, the murmur of nervous voices, but his symptoms should have vaulted him to the front of the line. The clerk, Brenda, was swamped, phones ringing, a line of anxious faces. Her customer service smile was fraying at the edges. When Jim finally reached her, leaning heavily on the counter, she barely glanced up. Name? Reason for visit? Her tone was clipped. James Corian, he rasped. Chest pain, severe, radiating to arm, can't breathe. Brenda typed. Date of birth? Insurance? August 12th, 1945. VA Healthcare. Service-connected heart condition. Wallet stolen. No cards, but I have my DD-214. He fumbled for the folded papers. Brenda held up a hand. Sir, I get you're not feeling well, but for non-critical cases, we need a current photo ID and proof of insurance. Hospital policy. We have to verify identity and payment ability first. This is critical, Jim insisted, dizziness washing over him. Call Dr. Evans at the VA. She knows my history. We can't just call doctors without a patient file, and we can't make a file without ID. Brenda's voice hardened like she was lecturing a stubborn child. Any photo ID, driver's license, passport? I told you, stolen, Jim repeated, frustration boiling under the fear. The DD-214 proves my service, my social. You can verify me through the VA. He pushed the worn papers toward her. Brenda barely glanced at them. Not a photo ID. Doesn't confirm current coverage. We need a scannable card or direct insurer verification. A supervising nurse, Ms. Henderson, older, sharper, but just as harried, overheard and stepped in. Issue? Brenda rattled off the problem, stressing. No ID, no insurance, claims chest pain but stable and talking. Ms. Henderson gave Jim a once-over, assessing the surface, not the agony beneath. An old man, disheveled, clutching his chest, but not screaming, not collapsing. Sir, she said coolly. Brenda's right. Cardiac care is expensive. Without ID and insurance, we can only stabilize active collapse. Since you're conscious, you'll need documentation or pay up front. A substantial deposit. A deposit? Jim choked. I need a doctor, not a bill. I served 30 years. The VA covers this. His voice rose, drawing stares. Just call Dr. Evans. Her number is... Ms. Henderson cut him off. Sir, yelling won't change policy. We can't treat without ID unless it's life or death stabilization. You're stable. Here's a list of urgent cares. Maybe their rules are different. She handed him a pamphlet. The message was clear. No ID, no card, no care. Jim felt the sting of betrayal. A combat medic who'd saved lives in hellholes was being turned away in a modern hospital, over a stolen wallet and red tape. He took the pamphlet, hand shaking with pain and fury, then turned and collapsed into a chair. Each breath was a fight, the pain in his chest, a brutal reminder of his mortality. Fumbling for his phone, vision blurring, he needed to call someone. But who? 911 felt absurd. He was in an ER Evans. She couldn't fix this from afar. Then he remembered a number he hadn't dialed in years. Colonel David Sterling, his old unit's commander, a man he'd mentored when Sterling was a green lieutenant. A Hail Mary. With trembling fingers he called. 3 rings. Then, Sterling. Colonel, it's Jim Corian, sir. His voice was thready. Jim? Sergeant Corian? What's wrong? You sound terrible. County General ER, sir. Chest pain? Bad. They won't treat me. No ID. Wallet stolen. VA patient. Each word was a struggle. Won't treat you? Sterling's voice turned razor sharp. For cardiac? Why? Hospital policy. No photo ID, no insurance card, even with VA status, denying a vet over paperwork. Sterling's fury was barely leashed. Jim, stay put. Don't argue. Just stay calm. I'm 5 minutes away, and I'm making 1 call on the way. The line went dead. Jim slumped back, pain and dizziness swirling. He didn't know if Sterling could fix this, but that steel in his voice was the first hope he'd felt. 4 minutes, an eternity. Then, 5 minutes after the call, the ER doors burst open. Colonel David Sterling marched in, still in combat uniform, insignia gleaming. His gaze swept the room, zeroing in on Jim. In seconds, he was at his side. Jim, hang on. Help's here. Behind him, 2 more uniforms entered. An Army doctor, Captain Miller, and a master sergeant with a med kit. Sterling didn't waste time with the desk. He locked eyes with Ms. Henderson, who'd stepped forward, wary. Nurse, he said, quiet but commanding. This is Sergeant First Class James Corian, U.S. Army, retired. Decorated combat medic. Acute cardiac distress. VA patient with a documented service-connected condition. Your facility refused him care over missing ID despite knowing his status. Ms. Henderson started, Colonel, hospital policy requires... Sterling's voice turned glacial. Your policy is now secondary to medical ethics and federal law on emergency care, especially for vets with known critical conditions. He nodded to the Army doctor. Captain Miller, assess Sergeant Corian. Master Sergeant, assist. The med team moved fast, checking vitals, administering oxygen. Brenda gaped from behind the counter. Sterling turned back to Ms. Henderson. My office has already contacted the VA Regional Director TRICARE and your Chief Administrator, who, I'm told, is a former Navy captain. He's en route. I'm sure he'll be fascinated by why a vet in crisis was denied over a stolen wallet. Ms. Henderson paled. Brenda looked petrified. We'll also file complaints with the Joint Commission and State Medical Board for patient abandonment and EMTALA violations. Sterling pulled out his military ID. Colonel David Sterling. Sergeant Corian served under me. I vouch for his identity and VA eligibility personally. If your system needs a credit card to start treatment, he slapped one down. Use mine. But if his care is delayed 1 more second, the consequences for this hospital and you will be severe. The effect was instant. Suddenly, a gurney appeared. Jim, stabilized by the Army medics, was lifted onto it. Cardiac unit doors swung open. Cardiologists were paged. The red tape wasn't just cut, it was annihilated. Sterling stayed until Jim was in the cardiac ICU, receiving full care. The hospital's chief administrator arrived, flustered, apologizing profusely to Sterling, then Jim. An investigation was promised. Brenda and Ms. Henderson vanished from the ER. Their futures there? Gone. Jim was having a serious cardiac event. The Army medic's quick action and the hospital's sudden cooperation saved his life. Days later, recovering, Jim got a visit from a remorseful Sterling. "Shouldn't have taken a colonel busting in to get you treated, Jim," Sterling muttered. "The system failed you." Jim, weak but smiling, whispered, "You didn't fail me, sir. Never did." The incident forced County General to overhaul its intake policies, especially for vets and those without ID. The story spread through veteran circles, a grim reminder that some battles didn't end when the uniform came off. Because when a hero's in peril, sometimes it takes another hero, one who commands respect, to slash through bureaucracy and turn policy into action. Into a life saved. Subscribe if you believe veterans deserve immediate, unconditional care. No exceptions.